Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Talika McCoy, and I welcome you to our gathering on today. We gather at 7 p.m. on Thursdays, Eastern Standard Time. If this is your first time, I am delighted that you are here. I started at about 6:59. I'm trying to give people time to come in. Also on our conference call line. We have a conference call line as well. So you can always join via conference call line if you'd like. But you're also welcome to join on Facebook at about 7 p.m. every Thursday. And then at about 8 o'clock on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel as well. So if you ever miss any of our gatherings, they will always be on Facebook and YouTube. So good evening. Anytime you see a background change, then that means that the topic or the idea is going to change. We are studying the book of Matthew. We're walking through that New Testament book, but we're going to deviate on this evening to focus on minority mental health. Some of you may be aware of the fact that July is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. So July is almost over, but it's important that we focus on minority mental health. Now, we know that Mental Health Awareness Month was in May. I gave us a few things to consider for our mental health or our mental wellness, I should say it that way. And so we did discuss that, and I had on my little green shirt because green is the official color when considering mental health or mental wellness type of awareness. But on this evening, particularly because it is July, I'm going to talk a bit about minority mental health. So I've written a lot of things down, and I just want to review some things. So there'll be some things here that you are already familiar with. So this will be a refresher, for some folks. And then perhaps for other people, regardless of your background, this information may be helpful. So when thinking about this acronym that some of us are familiar with, there's an acronym out, BIPOC. You've probably seen it before or you've heard it before, and you already know what it is. But just to be sure that we're all on the same page, I want to remind us and maybe just educate those who don't know that the acronym BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. Okay, so whenever you see that, it stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. So BIPOC was just created to, make us aware of the fact that not all people of color face the same levels of injustice. BIPOC is significant in recognizing really that Black and Indigenous people are severely impacted, for example, by systemic racism. Okay, so when I say indigenous people, I'm talking about Native people, people existing in a land from its earliest times. Those are the people I'm talking about when I mention indigenous. And so indigenous people and Black people face severe or are severely impacted by systemic racial injustices. So when I use that word systemic, just as a reminder and or a educational piece for those who are here on this evening, or maybe you're joining later, so welcome, so glad you're here. If you're not here in real time, live, I'm glad you're here. So when thinking about systemic racial injustices, that has to do with the systems that are in place that really create and maintain racial inequality in the lives of people of color. Let me give you an example. There's something called redlining. Redlining has to do with, it's a system that's used by banks. It's a system that's used by even real estate, folks in the industry of real estate. And what they do with redlining is they determine which neighborhoods would get loans to buy homes. And so neighborhoods where people of color lived are outlined in red ink. It's called redlining. And so they're deemed as the riskiest to invest in. So then that directly impacts, I'm talking about systemic racial injustice, that directly impacts people of color. For Black and brown people, when thinking about this example of redlining, it's impossible many times for them to get loans. So then redlining is an active way to enforce segregation. So when you hear people say that segregation is no longer alive and well, they may be thinking about during Jim Crow, they may be thinking about what they dealt with or what they saw in pictures when we were drinking from different water fountains, you know, whites only and colored. When thinking about segregation, they may only think about Jim Crow in the sense of, blacks in the back of the bus and whites in the front of the bus. You know, when they think about segregation, Jim Crow, they may be thinking about kids being segregated when it came to education. Those are examples. And then in 2023, the example of redlining is very much alive and well. So as I'm talking about mental health or National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, there may be those who say, well, why is there, in July an awareness like that when we just had a Mental Health Awareness Month in May for everybody? Why do you people have to always have your own thing, if you will? Well, it's because some people are enforcing certain types of, injustices are in place, to keep certain types of people from having the same things that you benefit from. So when you raise that question, out of the idea that you don't have to think about that, because, for example, you don't need affirmative action. You don't need that, because you never have to deal with a racial injustice. You don't have to accept even the fact that race is a social construct that divides human beings. And so that means that every human being is not afforded the same opportunity that you're afforded. So when you look at this July National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, you're thinking there's no need for that. Well, when people who are Black and brown deal with racism on a day-to-day basis, it affects them mentally. And so they need to know how to survive even in the midst of that type of injustice. So redlining may not affect you, but it does indeed affect particular neighborhoods where people of color are considered. Okay, so that's just an example. Go Google it, fact check me. You can even watch. I remember not long ago, Dr. Phil, for example, aired a program, one of his shows where there were people of color who went undercover, and they were looking for a home. And what they did was they actually recorded their experience. And after that, the same real estate agent was with a white couple. And it was a very different experience. So if you don't have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. That is great. That's really awesome. And I hope that you will stay with me as I kind of work through the particulars of the necessity of a minority mental health experience. I'm going to talk about cultural competence, even when considering healthcare, and why that's important. And really the idea that there is no cookie cutter way to do most things in our country that says it embraces diversity and inclusion. There's no cookie cutter way. That means that you need to learn how to not just talk about diversity, not just put certain types of people in place or at the table for a token experience, but to actually enact these things in your everyday interactions and how you do what you do. So those persons, I said BIPOC, that acronym is Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. When we reach out for help, we begin to heal ourselves and our communities. So it's important that you take care of your mental health. So when I gave that example of redlining, those types of instances can lead to declining mental health in Black, Indigenous, and people of color in their lives. And so when I'm talking about mental wellness and considering July and really beyond, I know it's the end of July, but thinking about National Minority Mental Health Awareness, when I say mental wellness, I'm talking about coping with stresses in life. Okay? I'm talking about realizing your abilities and your worth. Okay? I'm talking about caring for yourself, reaching out for help, learning well, living well, working well. I'm talking about contributing to your community and having valuable connections. Because like I said, when we reach out for help, we begin to heal ourselves and our communities. So when thinking about members of the Black community, I can give you an example of how, or I can just tell you, for example, that often Black persons, find support in their families, like in family and through community and through spirituality. And I'm going to give some ideas really for positive connections for the sake of your mental well-being. But first, when reaching out for help, I mentioned that, but I want to talk a little bit about don't just reach out for help, but consider culturally competent mental health professionals. Okay? I know that people can go to school and I know that they can do well. I know that people can learn things in books, and then there is a connected wisdom and desire to meet people where they are that we get to choose. You see, they don't give you grades on things like that. When it comes to competence, many times they use standardized tests to see if we're competent enough to earn a degree. Doctors, medical doctors, for example, they practice. That's what it's called. Where they are called practices. They work really hard, and I applaud their work. And then there's something called cultural competence when considering mental health professionals, those types of doctors, if you will. You cannot, if you are a person of color, you're an Indigenous person, if you are Black, you cannot simply just pick anybody. I'm saying that to you because cultural competence means that a person integrates your beliefs and your values into treatment. Not all people are going to do that. Some people believe that white is the standard. So because white is the standard, they're not going to consider making your treatment easier by addressing issues that matter to you that are linked to your culture. They're not going to think about, if they're not culturally competent, they're not going to think about counseling and other forms of mental health support that is directly connected, again, to your culture. When considering culturally competent mental health professionals, they deliver effective quality care to their patients who have diverse beliefs. So this means that they listen to what you say. And they listen to what matters to you. They listen to your attitudes. They listen to your values and they consider your behaviors, for example, as a Black person. If you are not getting that, you need to move on to another mental health professional. Sometimes Black folk, for example, are hesitant to go to a psychologist because they're thinking, oh, those people don't know. Yes, there are many who can help you, a mental health professional who can help you. You just have to be sure that you choose the right one. That's why we say Jesus and a therapist. It's okay to have a therapist, but it's not okay to not do your homework, okay? So let me give you an example. If you choose a therapist and you want to know if they are culturally competent, I'm talking about if you're just joining, July is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. So what I'm doing is going over a few things to help us in that regard, okay? So right now I'm talking about culturally competent mental health professionals, and I'm giving us an example. Let me give you an example of a competent and culturally competent, because there are a lot of competent doctors out there, a lot of competent people practicing, and that's just fine. But right now, I want us to consider, are they culturally aware, or do they care about that? Or is white the standard and they don't have to consider anybody's culture? If I am a culturally competent mental health professional, then I will listen to my patient when they share their religious or spiritual beliefs with me, and I will have enough humility to adjust the treatment plan to accommodate their need while simultaneously ensuring high quality care. So I won't be a person who will neglect, my training and my learning and knowing what quality care looks like. I'm not talking about I will do that. I will just also, it doesn't have to be an either or. You see, it's a both and. I will have that quality care according to what I've learned and how I've practiced, and I will listen to your religious or spiritual beliefs and whatever that is. I will actually have a conversation with you as a real person to be able to listen to you. You won't just be a body in a patient position, but you will be a human being with a story. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to, chat it up with you for 2 hours. No, that's not what I'm saying. So please hear me clearly, because mental health professionals have to, they have to serve many people. So I'm not talking about I'm your buddy, your friend, your pal, and your confidant. No. I'm still going to be a professional. And in my professional stance, I'm going to care about, care for you beyond medication. I'm going to care for you beyond the last person I saw. So I'm going to just treat you just like them. I'm going to care for you beyond just my culture. I'm going to care for you beyond what I think I know about your culture. Because guess what? Even if I know your culture, there may be some details that mean something different to you than what I think I know. So I'm going to listen to you. Let me give you an example now, I'm not a mental health professional, but I am a spiritual care professional, pastoral care. Okay. I have had special training in that area. Now, not all pastors have had that, okay? But I have had clinical pastoral education in more than one setting. And what that has done is it has challenged me beyond, for example, the Black local church. Okay, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Now, I'm talking about being culturally competent. So as a spiritual care provider, as a pastor, I served, for example, in the context where there was a Muslim man. I'm giving you an example, okay? And during the contact with this gentleman, I reached out to shake the hand of this Muslim man, okay? And you know what he did? He put his hand to his chest, okay? Now, my culture, I can tell you, like, for example, when I'm at the Black church all the time, for example, if I just stay in the Black church, this will be all that I know. In the Black church, we hug one another. I mean, if you don't hug somebody, they may even deem you to be standoffish, even as a minister. Oh, she can't even hug anybody, because some of them will even tell you, they've told me, oh, I'm a hugger. So in Black church culture, I can tell you that I have been, even as a small person, I have been made to feel like I have to hug people. I'm just giving you an example of culture. I've had people with my little bitty body pull me to them, because I'm not bigger than some children. I'm just being honest, and it's been forced upon me. Like, you're going to hug. Okay. So outside of that experience of hug, and touch, I learned that many Muslims, they believe that physical contact with the opposite sex is unnecessary. Some of them believe that it's discouraged. And some of them, so that's why that man did that with his hand. Some of them even believe that it's prohibited. So you see, in one culture, if I do not embrace in some way, it's considered one way. But in another culture, as a pastoral care provider, I had to understand that the reasoning behind it, varied from person to person. And really, it wasn't about or necessary for me to know the reasons why that gentleman would not shake my hand. You see, I just had to think to myself, each person has the right to consent to how they are touched. Again, maybe not in my cultural experience, But I had to come to the reality as a spiritual care provider that, holding hands, shaking hands, that those mannerisms, they are different. The way people greet one another varies across cultures. So I know that as a spiritual care provider. But again, as a mental health professional, mental health professionals should be aware of and integrate your beliefs, your values into treatment. So when you're looking for a mental health professional, then that's what you need to do. That's why I have said, and many people have said, it's okay to have Jesus and a therapist. Because if you are a person, for example, that's introverted, or if you dealt with something in your life that traumatized you and touch really bothers you, but you go to a church, for example, and they're telling you to touch your neighbor or grab your neighbor's hand, and things like that, and you dealt with traumas in your life, that church experience could possibly traumatize you. That's why you need to have a therapist. Because not all pastors and preachers think like that. They don't think about that. Because spiritual care, providing spiritual care can be very different than a Sunday morning worship experience. So that's why I'm saying go to church. Don't stop going to church. Embrace your culture. Don't deny your culture. Just make sure that if you need a mental health professional, you get one. You see? So it's all right. It's all right. So then now I want to talk a little bit, as we consider some of the traumas. And I'm so grateful that at Shaw Divinity School, I'm a professor at Shaw. And in the fall, I get to teach a course on trauma. I get to talk about a theological response to trauma. And for my students, and some of them are pastors of a local church, some of these things that I'm telling you now, if they haven't already thought about it, because many pastors have, but if they haven't, just to think about how that trauma experience, at least have some tools so that the people at the church will feel comfortable seeking a mental health professional because they are triggered in various spaces. And the church is not exempt. So go to church, praise Jesus, and have a therapist. There is somebody who understands those types of traumas, okay? And that's not everybody's story. But it may be someone. So again, seek a culturally competent mental health professional. So then I mentioned how community may be helpful when considering minority mental health. So let's go back to community. So I'm going to talk about how creating and sustaining a community around you is important for your mental health. Now, I did mention how some things can be traumatizing, but not everybody knows your triggers. And so you can't blame, for example, the church for not knowing your triggers. You have to be sure to take care of yourself, okay? Because all of the thousands of people who go to church every Sunday, the pastor, for example, is trying to think of everyone. Okay, your mental health professional can cater to just you. See that? So don't stop your community engagement, because the fact of the matter is humans are social creatures, and our brains are really wired to seek connections with other people. So for the sake of your mental wellness, don't ever cut off connections with community, because these connections can help us share ideas. Have you ever shared ideas with your community? That can be a beautiful thing and healthy for your mind. Gives you a sense of belonging, and even a sense of security. I'm so grateful for all of the communities that I'm a part of. I have the church. I have convention type connections. I have, to appease my educational, hunger. I have Shaw University connections. I have friends that are in academia. I have the Louisville Institute, where there are minds in there, it's academics. And so I get to be with them, and it's on an academic level. I have that community. I'm part of a sorority, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And of course I have my family and friends, but those community type things that I named, each of them serve me in different ways. I don't expect for the church to be Louisville Institute. I don't expect for the church to give me what the PhDs give me. And I don't expect for the PhDs to necessarily give me, what the church gives me. And so that's important to me. So I have that group. And I see you, Sister Samantha, saying, don't forget us. There you go. I have you all. And, although I don't get to see you, in this space right now, some of you I do get to see. I've actually met some of you face to face, and that is a blessing. And then there are others of you who live in other states, and you let me know, and so that's a blessing. So we get to communicate through email. So I just named my communities, and I hope I didn't forget any other community. But if I did, I'm so sorry, because you matter. I just have so many of you, and I love you all. And I'm saying for me, and I hope you're the same way, I don't expect each community to give me the same thing. I'm part of those various communities because they feed who I am. And then I have a total experience to where, I'm blessed, and as I mentioned, convention. Just this past Monday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I was able to be at the Woman's Baptist Home and Foreign Missionary Convention. And that was a blessing. So you all bless me. So I hope that what I'm saying for my life, you're doing it for your life. You need community. You need community. I mean, think about it. Even when we are children, talking about community. As young as infancies, babies will point to objects. And what they're doing, that's a way of sharing their interest. And what they want you to do is go pick up their object. And when you pick up the object, they want you to pretty much share that experience with them, right? That's like community. And so it does matter. The need to be in relationships with another or with other people is deeply ingrained in our DNA. So if you're going to be mentally well, be sure you stay connected to your community. Okay, so you may say, well, Dr. McCoy, give me a few pointers on how I can stay connected to my community. Well, if you're here right now, I'll use this one as one, come here on Thursdays at 7 p.m. There you go. Keep coming here. That's something. So this is like an online community. Be sure that you consider online communities where you can just stay where you are and tap in, right? Okay. And I hope that I give you space to ask questions, even to challenge. You don't have to agree with everything I say. That's not what this is. I hope I give you just a safe space and an option, so that wherever you are, we can be together. So this is a online, I guess, community. But then there are in-person communities, right? Get involved in community activities. There are organizations, there are places you can volunteer. And if there's not one you like, consider creating one. Go ahead and create one, okay? You can do that. You can attend community events. There are events, especially in the summer, right? I see you, Sister Barbara, similar to our experience with the triune. Yes, with God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There you go. So see, God provides for us, or is for us, everything God needs, everything we need God to be. You need God to be a parent. There you go. You need God to be a brother. There you go. You need God to be a director. There you go. God, Jesus, Holy Spirit. There you go. That's a good point. I see you, Sister Michelle. So grateful for being a part of your community. Yes, our community. Yes, this is our community. And so I thank God for you all. But you can reach out to your neighbors. You can advocate for change. Whatever it is, you can really just connect with your community. And I mentioned virtual spaces like this one. I mean, you can participate in online events. It's all over social media. Not everything is bad, right? On social media. You can create online content yourself, create your own community. I mean, you can show kindness and respect, to those who are already doing it like you do here with me. That creates community. And so it's just important, that we consider the value of this month and even beyond this month. This month, July, is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. So I hope I've given you some information. And really more than that, because you can find information anywhere. I just really want to encourage you, to take care of yourself and to value. When people say something like, it doesn't matter, it shouldn't be any different. Value the fact that you are surviving. If you are a person of color, if you are Black, if you are indigenous person of color, value the fact that you are surviving in a nation that is not always kind to you. So value that you are victorious even in the midst of that, and value your mental health. So when people say that, oh, people are people and it shouldn't matter and there's no difference, you remind them and yourself of systemic, racism, like redlining. Give them some examples, show them, because sometimes the light needs to be turned on. Even with people who are Black, indigenous, and people of color, sometimes they don't even see it because there's been this white standard to the point where, you're not supposed to see it in the first place. But when you open your eyes, you realize that some of the reactions that you have, some of that stuff is embedded in you. There's some traumatic experience. There's trauma in your body. And you need to work through that. But the first way to do that is to accept that it's true in the first place. This is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, okay? I see you, Sister Barbara, saying, how do we reach our youth with this message? Well, I think that it starts with one youth at a time, Sister Barbara. How are we talking first to the youth who are in our lives? If there's a child in your life, how are you giving them this message? Right now I'm just talking. I'm talking about the importance of, your health, your mental health. So, Sister Barbara, I would say first, if you're going to reach your youth, you need to ask yourself how you're talking to the youth who are around you in your community first, in your family first. That's it, in your family first. I always say there is a center circle, there's a outer circle, and then there's like an outermost circle. That nucleus, that inner circle are the people in your family. Sometimes we want to change the world when we really need to just go to see a family member first, okay? So how am I talking to the youth in my family? Okay, next, the outer circle would be my community, my neighborhood, my church. How am I working in those areas with the youth, to give this same message that I've just given today? You can give them the same information I just gave. They're not looking to buy a house right now, but you can find other examples, or let them tell you examples of where they have felt less than, based on their being Black or indigenous or a person of color. And then you go larger than that. And that's when you join these advocacy groups and things like that, where they meet and they, have their signs out and things like that, like the Black Lives Matter and things like that. Let youth see you fighting, for their mental wellness. Let them see you. You can have it in your heart, but it needs to play out through your arms and your hands and your feet and your mouth and your words and your resources. So that's what I will offer to you. That's a very good question. Are there any more questions? That's a very good question, Sister Barbara. Any other questions? I'm going to pause before I go, because you might have another question. And that's all I have for this evening. I hope it's been helpful. And I was about to say healthy. That's probably an appropriate word as well. I hope it's been healthy for you, as you consider your mental health and the mental health of those around you, especially this month. We only have a few more days, but especially this month, as we just consider, the plight of the Black body, and so, okay. So if you have a question, just send it to me, okay? And I'll be sure to answer it in public where everybody can see it, okay? So you can always come back to the chat and you can see where I answer your questions. God bless you all. Thank you for being here. And remember, take care of your mental health. You're welcome. And we'll be back on next week. I always say we'll be back. And maybe that's because, Sister Barbara, I'm saying God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, and me. So we'll be back, if it be their will, on next week. And we'll continue the book of Matthew. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourselves. I love you. God bless you.